And welcome back to our special coverage from Philadelphia ahead of tonight's debate. Several Trump allies are pushing the former president to stay on message tonight. Here was North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum earlier on CBS News 24/7.
Well, I think when President Trump is talking about the economy and talking about the border and talking about all these things, yeah, he's absolutely winning.
And Trump campaign senior advisor Tim Murtaugh is here with us now to talk about it. Good to see you, Tim. Thanks for being here. So you heard from Doug Burgum. Lindsey Graham has been saying the same thing. They want the former president to stay on message in this debate. But there's also a feeling among some allies of the former president that, he should let Trump be Trump. Where do you stand?
Well, I think that he's going to be Donald Trump. It's no secret who Donald Trump is. I mean, I dare say he's probably the most famous human being on the entire planet. However, I think tonight will be a debate about issues, and I think the issue set really sets up very well for Donald Trump and for the entirety of the campaign, really, because everyone who's going to vote in this election has lived through both administrations, both the Trump administration and the Biden-Harris administration, and they know what their lives were like during that time. They know that the economy was good, that inflation was not out of control, that our borders were secure, and that the world was generally not on fire when Donald Trump was president. And so tonight is going to be an opportunity to make sure this is the first time, and maybe the only time, that a lot of voters are going to be able to hear Kamala Harris actually speak about her own record and take questions. And the goal, I think, tonight will be to make sure that she owns her entire record, because she is, in fact, a San Francisco liberal who was the district attorney in San Francisco, the attorney general of California, a U.S. senator from California, and now the vice president. She has to own the record, and she has a very leftist record in those years. She also cannot be allowed to escape from responsibility for what she has taken part in the failures of the Biden administration. It's the Biden-Harris administration. The White House is still very clear about that. She owns that record, too.
There is a significant gender gap in this election. You see it in our own CBS News polling in these battleground states. Donald Trump, of course, has a new opponent in Kamala Harris, as you mentioned. But does running against a woman change his calculus heading into this debate?
I don't think so, because it's still a campaign about issues, and this will be a debate about issues. Women care about inflation. Women care about the cost of energy. How much does it cost to put gas in the car? And groceries and food on the table, groceries in the refrigerator. They care about safe streets and safe neighborhoods. They care about a secure border. They care about all these things. And so I think that's the way he's going to approach it. I don't think it matters to him whether his opponent is a man or a woman either. Now, I would say people always talk about the women and the calculus that goes into that in the electorate. I would point out that Kamala Harris has her own gender gap. She is well behind Donald Trump in getting the votes of men. And once again, it's the same issue set. It's the economy, it's the border, it's public safety, it's America's entanglement in these never-ending wars that we once again see in countries around the world. And a lot of Americans are wondering, why are we doing this? Why are we taking care and sending so much money overseas when we should really be taking care of situations here at home? And once again, that is going to be something that Kamala Harris has to own as the vice president for Joe Biden.
So talking about those policy issues, lots of allies of the former president say they want him to talk about those policy issues. But Trump has been saying on Truth Social just yesterday or a couple days ago that he wants to prosecute people that are acting nefariously in the election, already casting doubt about this election and still refusing to accept the results of the last election. Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, the premise of that question sort of presupposes that certain people are okay with people breaking election law. And I don't really think that's the case. If people break election law, they should be prosecuted. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
They are prosecuted.
Certainly. So why is this such a controversial thing? It's something that we should all agree on.
But talking about extending it to legal, other legal teams, to donors, it suggested the idea of prosecuting political opponents.
If you're going to ask a question about someone prosecuting political opponents and don't mention that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Department of Justice are currently, at this moment, prosecuting Donald Trump, then it's not an honest and forthright conversation. They are currently, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Department of Justice are currently engaged in a prosecution that could end up with them trying to sentence Donald Trump to jail. The way you ask that question, it's though that's not even happening. but it is happening. And I think once you arrive at the conclusion that none of these charges
those are
would
not
have been,
directives of the Justice Department.
who is in charge of the Justice Department? Is an executive branch agency. Who leads the executive branch? Who appoints the Attorney General? The Attorney General is not part of the Constitution as some sort of independent officer. The Attorney General is a member of the executive branch over which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris preside. That's inescapable.
I do want to talk about the idea of the muted mics. That was a request originally from the Biden team in the last debate, and your campaign argued for that again this time around, and that will be the case? Or argued for the previous rules to be the case. But I'm curious what kind of impact you think that would have on this debate. It seemed to have served Trump well in the last one.
Well, let's remember how we arrived at this point with the rules of this debate. This was a debate that was agreed to originally by the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign. And then, of course, Biden was shown the door by Kamala Harris and others. And then Kamala Harris basically said, if you don't agree to this debate as is, as it was already constructed, then you're a coward, right? So Trump says, all right, let's do it. We'll do it. And then the Harris campaign actually put out a statement that says the debate over the debate is over. They were happy. And then all of a sudden they said, wait. Actually, now we want to change the rules. And ABC and the Trump campaign said, what are you talking about? We've had this agreement for a long time. And so finally, they're still quibbling about it. They're still griping about the rules. She actually should be worried about having an open mic in front of her, because it's going to be on her to try to have to explain how it is that she's at odds with herself. All of these different, we're in Pennsylvania right now. The biggest issue in Pennsylvania is going to be economically fracking. That is the process by which one of the processes you can get oil and natural gas out of the ground. She is so opposed to fracking that when she was the Attorney General of California, she sued the Obama administration. She sued Barack Obama to try to get them to stop fracking off the coast of California. Now she's going to come to Pennsylvania and say, I love fracking. I don't think so. She needs to be worried about the microphone in front of her, because how in the world is she going to connect and square that circle? I don't know.
Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, key battleground state. We will be here a lot. It is neck and neck, so a state we will be watching. Tim Murtaugh, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.